I had been a software engineer at DataTech for 5 years, having just developed a system that saved the company millions. When they hired Jack Harper as the new technical director, something felt off about his demeanor. My innovative data sync system was my pride and joy, and I held the patent for it. But Harper seemed determined to undermine everything I had built. I never expected to be fired, but when it happened, I simply smiled and said, "Good luck." Let me tell you where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button before I reveal why his Monday was about to get very interesting. The data sync system I developed was truly revolutionary for our company. It automated data integration across all our platforms, reducing processing time by 78% and saving approximately $4 million annually in operational costs. The elegant architecture allowed for real-time synchronization while maintaining data integrity, something our competitors were still struggling to achieve. I had poured my heart and soul into this project, often staying until 2 in the morning to perfect the algorithms and streamline the codebase. Our previous CEO, Thomas Wilson, had been an exceptional leader who understood the value of innovation and respected the technical expertise of his team. He would frequently stop by my desk to discuss progress and offer insights without micromanaging. Thomas created an environment where creativity flourished and people felt valued for their contributions. Under his leadership, I felt empowered to push boundaries and explore cutting-edge solutions. One particularly smart move I made was registering the patent for DataSync under my name while granting DataTech a usage license. Thomas and I had discussed this arrangement thoroughly, and both agreed it was fair considering I had conceptualized and built much of the system during weekends and after hours. The legal agreement stated clearly that I maintained ownership of the intellectual property, while the company had non-exclusive rights to implement the system internally. This detail seemed insignificant at the time, just standard paperwork that protected both parties. Everything changed when Richard Barnes took over as CEO. His first company-wide email emphasized optimization efficiency and strategic restructuring corporate speak that everyone recognized as code for layoffs and cost-cutting. During his initial presentation, Barnes outlined his vision for a leaner organization with more centralized decision-making. The atmosphere in the room grew tense as employees exchanged worried glances, uncertain about their future with the company. Shortly after Barnes arrived, he brought in Jack Harper as the new technical director. Harper came from Nexus Technologies, a direct competitor that had recently lost significant market share due to failed product launches. This immediately raised red flags for me, but I tried to remain optimistic. Perhaps Harper had learned valuable lessons from those failures that could benefit DataTech. I believed in second chances and was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Our first meeting with Harper revealed troubling signs. As I walked him through the DataSync architecture, he interrupted frequently with questions that demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of distributed systems. When I explained how our proprietary algorithms optimize data flow, his eyes glazed over. Yet despite his obvious knowledge gaps, Harper spoke with unwavering confidence, making sweeping statements about changes we should implement immediately. During that same meeting, I noticed Harper paying special attention to a group of junior developers he had brought with him from Nexus. He repeatedly directed questions to them, rather than the senior engineers who had built our systems. When my colleague Laura provided a detailed explanation of our security protocols, Harper dismissed her input and instead praised Mark, his former Nexus associate, for a much simpler observation. It became clear that Harper was establishing his inner circle, and none of the original DataTech engineers were being included. Within weeks of his arrival, Harper began implementing changes to DataSync without consulting me or understanding the system architecture. During a development meeting, he announced we would be replacing the custom messaging protocol I had designed with a standard one that was completely unsuitable for our data volume. When I tried to explain the performance implications, Harper cut me off mid-sentence. Harper looked around the room with a condescending smile and said, "Some people just resist change because they are too attached to their old ways of thinking. We need forward-thinking team members who can adapt to new methodologies. That public humiliation was just the beginning." In subsequent meetings, Harper consistently interrupted my presentations, questioned my expertise in front of clients, and rejected my proposals without proper evaluation. During one particularly painful product review, he actually laughed at a solution I proposed, saying it was exactly what someone with outdated skills would suggest. The room fell silent as everyone avoided eye contact, uncomfortable with the blatant disrespect being displayed. The team I had built over years began to dissolve. First, Laura was transferred to the customer support department despite her exceptional engineering skills. Then Alex was laid off during a small restructuring supposedly due to budget constraints, though Harper immediately hired 2 former Nexus employees. By the end of the second month, most of my trusted colleagues had been reassigned or let go, replaced by members of what staff now secretly called Harper Core. Harper introduced a labyrinthine approval process that required triple documentation for even minor code changes. What once took hours now took days, grinding productivity to a halt. When I suggested streamlining the workflow, Harper accused me of trying to circumvent proper protocols. The new procedures seemed specifically designed to obstruct efficiency rather than enhance it, contradicting the optimization mandate that Barnes had emphasized. Desperate to salvage the situation, I requested a meeting with Richard Barnes. After 3 rescheduled appointments, I finally got 15 minutes with the CEO. I carefully outlined my concerns about the changes to DataSync and the impact on system performance. Barnes listened politely, but with growing impatience. When I finished, he simply said, "Jack comes highly recommended, and I trust his judgment on technical matters. Perhaps you should focus more on adapting to our new direction, rather than resisting it." The meeting ended without any commitment to address the issues I had raised. As Harper predicted, the system began experiencing problems. Response times slowed dramatically. Data synchronization failures occurred daily, and clients started complaining. What Harper failed to understand was that his changes had undermined the core architecture that made DataSync effective. The system had been designed as an integrated whole, with each component carefully optimized to work with the others. His piecemeal modifications destroyed that harmony. I spent numerous nights and weekends trying to patch the system, creating workarounds for the problems introduced by Harper changes. Despite adding 20 hours of unpaid work to my week, I received no recognition for these efforts. Instead, during a performance review, Harper noted that I seemed to be struggling to maintain the system I had built, suggesting that perhaps it had not been as well designed as everyone thought. The final insult came during a board presentation, where Harper showcased the DataSync system to investors. As I watched from the back of the room, he described features I had built as recent innovations implemented under his leadership. He referenced highly technical aspects of the system as if he understood them, though I knew from our interactions that he did not grasp the underlying principles. When an investor asked who had originally developed the system, Harper vaguely mentioned a team effort while emphasizing the improvements his leadership had brought about. My name was never mentioned once. The breaking point arrived on a Thursday when the entire system crashed spectacularly during peak usage hours. Client data became unsynchronized across platforms, causing financial calculations to produce incorrect results. The customer service department was flooded with calls from angry clients, and the company faced potential liability for the errors. Harper immediately called an emergency all-hands meeting. I spent the entire night rebuilding indices and restoring data consistency. By 5:30 in the morning, bleary-eyed and exhausted, I had managed to recover most of the critical information and implement a temporary fix that would keep the system running until a proper solution could be developed. No one else on the current team understood the system well enough to accomplish this, a fact that gave me no satisfaction as I watched years of my work crumbling due to incompetent leadership. The emergency meeting began at 8 in the morning. With dark circles under my eyes, I took a seat near the back of the conference room, documentation in hand, detailing both the cause of the failure and my recommended solutions. Harper stood at the front, his expression thunderous as he surveyed the assembled staff. The system crash was catastrophic. He began, his voice controlled, but tense. We lost 6 hours of processing time and potentially compromised data integrity for our top 5 clients. This kind of failure is completely unacceptable. I braced myself for what was coming next, but still felt the impact when Harper turned and pointed directly at me. This failure stems from fundamental flaws in the original system architecture developed by Garrett. The Band-Aid fixes he has been implementing are insufficient and demonstrate a lack of forward thinking in the initial design. I stood up, documentation in hand. Actually, the system was stable for 3 years before the recent changes. If you look at the logs, you will see that the failure occurred specifically in the components that were modified against my recommendations. I have a complete analysis here. Harper cut me off before I could finish. We do not have time for excuses or finger-pointing. The fact remains that you, as the original developer, have been unable to maintain system stability. This raises serious questions about your technical capabilities. The room fell silent, as colleagues stared at their laptops, unwilling to make eye contact. Even Harper team members seemed uncomfortable with the blatant misrepresentation of facts. Yet no one spoke up to contradict him. The meeting concluded with Harper announcing a complete system overhaul to be led by his trusted associates from Nexus. No mention was made of my overnight work that had restored the system, nor of the detailed analysis I had prepared. As people filed out, a few colleagues patted my shoulder sympathetically but said nothing. 2 hours later, I received an email requesting my presence in the Human Resources Department at 11. My stomach dropped as I read the message, though part of me had been expecting this for weeks. When I arrived, Harper was already seated beside Julia from HR, his expression a mixture of sternness and what seemed like satisfaction. Garrett, Julia began gently. We have been reviewing your performance and fit within the new organizational structure. Unfortunately, we have determined that your role is no longer aligned with the technical direction of the company. Let us be direct, Harper interrupted. Your inability to adapt to changes and your continued resistance to new methodologies have become obstacles to our progress. The recent system failure was the final evidence we needed that a change is necessary. Julia slid a folder across the table containing severance details. Your contribution to DataTech has been noted, and we are offering 2 weeks of severance pay along with continued health coverage for 1 month. We will need you to sign these documents and clear out your desk by the end of the day. I sat motionless, absorbing the shock, despite having anticipated it. 5 years of dedication, countless late nights, and genuine innovation all dismissed in a 5-minute meeting. The injustice burned in my chest, but something else flickered in my mind, a realization that suddenly changed everything. I will not spend another dime on an incompetent employee who cannot maintain his own system, Harper added unnecessarily, seeming to relish the moment. The company needs forward-thinking engineers, not those clinging to outdated approaches. As his words sank in, I remembered the patent documentation filed safely in my home office. A slight smile crossed my lips. Good luck, I said, simply as I stood to leave. Harper looked momentarily confused by my calm response, but quickly returned to his self-satisfied expression. Julia escorted me to my desk, where I was given 30 minutes to collect my personal items under the watchful eye of security. Colleagues watched from a distance, some with genuine sadness, others with the uncomfortable look of those who fear they might be next. Scott, a junior developer who had always sought my mentorship, approached, despite the security presence. This is wrong, Garrett. Everyone knows you built this place. Thanks, Scott, I replied quietly. Sometimes things have to break completely before they can be rebuilt properly. As I carried my small box of personal items through the office, I noticed the mixture of expressions. Some people averted their eyes as if unemployment might be contagious. Others offered sympathetic glances but remained at their desks, protecting their own positions. The few who had come from Nexus with Harper watched with what seemed like satisfaction, already planning how to divide my responsibilities among themselves. Walking to my car in the parking garage, the reality hit me fully. I had just lost the job that had defined my professional identity for 5 years. The system I had built with such care was now in the hands of people who did not understand or value it. The weekend stretched before me like an empty void, with no code to write, no problems to solve, no purpose to fulfill. I spent Friday night staring at my living room ceiling, replaying every interaction with Harper, and wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. By Saturday morning, my sadness had transformed into something more productive, a determination to stand up for myself and my work. It was time to remind DataTech exactly who owned the intellectual property they relied upon. Sunday morning, I contacted Patricia Lawson, an attorney specializing in intellectual property law, who had helped me file the original patent. After explaining the situation, she confirmed what I already suspected. DataTech only had a licensing agreement for data sync, not ownership rights. As the patent holder, I had the legal authority to revoke their usage license, particularly since the company had materially altered the system against my explicit recommendations, violating a clause in our agreement. By Sunday evening, Patricia had drafted an official notice of license termination, citing specific violations of the agreement terms. The document explained that as of midnight, DataTech would no longer have legal rights to use any aspect of the DataSync system, including all algorithms, architectural designs, and proprietary protocols. Any continued usage would constitute patent infringement and could result in substantial financial penalties. I reviewed the document carefully before authorizing Patricia to send it to DataTech Legal Department, with copies to Richard Barnes, Jack Harper, and the Board of Directors. Monday morning arrived with a sense of anticipation I had not felt in months. I imagined the scene unfolding at DataTech headquarters, the gradual realization that their entire data infrastructure had become legally unusable overnight. The emergency shutdown procedure would have to be initiated to avoid litigation, effectively halting all business operations. Client data would stop, flowing transactions would remain incomplete, and the sophisticated analytics that gave the company its competitive edge would go dark. At 9:15, my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. DataTech main switchboard. I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction before answering calmly. Garrett speaking. Garrett, this is Richard Barnes. There seems to be some confusion regarding the data sync system. Our servers are displaying shutdown notifications, citing patent enforcement. I assume you know something about this. The tone of barely controlled panic in his voice was unmistakable. In the background, I could hear the chaos of an office, in crisis phones ringing, and urgent voices calling back and forth. There is no confusion, Mr. Barnes, I replied professionally. As the patent holder for the data sync system, I have exercised my right to terminate the licensing agreement due to material violations of our terms. Your legal department should have received formal notification yesterday evening. This is ridiculous, Barnes exploded. You cannot simply shut down our entire operation over a personal grievance about being let go. This is not about my termination, I explained. The agreement specifically prohibited unauthorized architectural modifications that compromised system integrity. Your technical director implemented exactly such changes, despite repeated warnings about the consequences. The recent system crash demonstrated the material damage caused by these violations. After a tense silence, Barnes spoke again, his voice noticeably more controlled. What would it take to resolve this situation immediately? We have clients waiting and millions in transactions pending. I would be happy to discuss resolution options with the full board and your legal team I offered. Shall we say, 11 at your offices. By 11, DataTech headquarters was in full crisis mode. Employees huddled in corners, whispering anxiously while executives rushed between conference rooms with expressions of barely contained panic. I entered the building not as a disgraced former employee but as the owner of intellectual property vital to the company operations. Patricia walked beside me, briefcase in hand, projecting confident professionalism. The boardroom fell silent as we entered. Richard Barnes sat at the head of the table, flanked by the company legal team. Board members filled most seats, their expressions grim. Jack Harper sat slightly apart, his face flushed with what appeared to be a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming. Barnes began, his tone formal but strained. We hope to resolve this unfortunate situation quickly and amicably. Patricia took the lead, laying out the specific violations of the licensing agreement and the legal consequences of continued infringement. She presented documentation of Harper modifications to the system architecture and expert opinions on how these changes had compromised system integrity, directly violating Section 7 of our agreement. As the presentation continued, board members increasingly directed their attention toward Harper, whose discomfort became more evident with each slide. When Patricia displayed side-by-side comparisons of the original system architecture and Harper destructive modifications, one board member removed his glasses in disbelief. Mr. Plaistons, Harper, do you understand what you were changing when you made these modifications? The board member asked pointedly. Harper shifted in his seat. The changes were necessary, modernizations to an outdated system. Did you understand that these specific components were protected by patent constraints? The board member pressed. Harper hesitation was all the answer they needed. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. As the full implications became clear, their technical director had tampered with patented technology he did not understand, triggering a completely avoidable crisis. What are your terms? Mr. Thompson Barnes asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. I had spent the weekend considering exactly this question. I could demand my job back, but returning to a hostile environment held little appeal. Instead, I outlined a different vision. I will grant DataTech a new limited license for emergency use of the system for 30 days, allowing you to transition client data safely, I began. After that period, you have two options. Purchase the patent outright for $20 million, reflecting its true market value, and the cost of the disruption caused, or negotiate a new annual licensing agreement at $2 million per year, with strict oversight provisions. The room erupted in protests about the figures, but Patricia calmly presented market valuations of similar technologies and calculations of the financial impact of the current shutdown. As the board members reviewed the numbers, their objections gradually subsided. Alternatively, I added, I would consider a reduced purchase price of $12 million if Mr. Harper is removed from any position involving oversight of the data sync system, given his demonstrated inability to manage it appropriately. Harper's face contorted with rage. "This is blackmail," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "You are holding the company hostage because you could not adapt to new leadership." The board chair raised his hand for silence. "Actually, Mr. Harper, this appears to be the consequence of your modifying patented technology without proper understanding or authorization. The question before us is not about Mr. Thompson's ethics, but about your competence." As negotiations continued through the afternoon, additional details emerged that further weakened Harper's position. An internal audit revealed that he had taken credit for several innovations that predated his arrival. Former Nexus colleagues admitted he had exaggerated his role in projects there as well. By day end, not only had Datatech agreed to my financial terms, but the board had initiated an investigation into Harper hiring and performance. Instead of returning to Datatech, I used part of the settlement to launch my own consulting firm specializing in data integration systems. Within weeks, I had hired several former Datatech colleagues who had been displaced during Harper tenure, including Laura and Alex, offering them equity stakes to reflect my belief in shared ownership of innovation. Through industry connections, I learned that Harper had been terminated following the internal investigation. Apparently, the board had discovered multiple instances of misrepresentation in his resume, and evidence that he had deliberately undermined existing systems to justify bringing in his associates from Nexus. Datatech stock had taken a significant hit after the incident became public, and Richard Barnes' position as CEO was reported to be precarious. 6 months after my dramatic exit from Datatech, my new company, Integral Systems, had grown from a small consulting operation to a recognized innovator in the data integration space. We had secured contracts with 3 Fortune 500 companies and developed a reputation for both technical excellence and ethical business practices. The office space we had initially thought would last a year was already becoming crowded as our team expanded to 28 talented engineers and analysts. I made it a priority to bring on board the most talented individuals who had been casualties of Harper reign at Datatech. Beyond Laura and Alex, I reached out to Scott, the junior developer who had shown such promise, and May, a brilliant database architect who had been sidelined despite her exceptional skills. Each brought unique perspectives and abilities that strengthened our collective expertise, and each received equity in the company to ensure they benefited directly from our shared success. The culture at Integral Systems reflected everything I had found lacking in my final months at Datatech. We maintained transparent decision-making processes where technical considerations took precedence over politics. Engineers at all levels were encouraged to voice concerns and suggest improvements without fear of retribution. We celebrated innovation while maintaining healthy work-life boundaries, recognizing that sustainable creativity required well-rested minds. Looking back on the painful experience of being fired, I recognized it as a disguised opportunity. Had I remained at Datatech, I would have continued building someone else's dream, while suppressing my own vision for what a technology company could be. The humiliation and anger I felt watching Harper dismantle my work had fueled a determination to create something better, something truly mine. The legal battle over the DataSync patent had taught me the crucial importance of protecting intellectual property. I established clear policies at Integral that respected individual contributions, while ensuring the company maintained necessary usage rights. We implemented a patent sharing program, where inventors received ongoing royalties for innovations developed during their employment, creating alignment between personal and company interests. The most profound lesson, however, transcended business strategies and legal protections. Through the darkest moments of public humiliation and professional rejection, I discovered that my value as an engineer and as a person was not determined by Jack Harper assessment or even Datatech recognition. The systems I built worked because they were well-designed regardless of who acknowledged their merit. My skills remained unchanged, despite being labeled inadequate by someone who lacked the expertise to evaluate them properly. Surprisingly, I no longer harbored resentment toward Harper. His arrogance and incompetence had inadvertently launched me into a far better position than I would have achieved through steady promotion at Datatech. In a strange way, I owed my current success to his misguided attempts to undermine me. Without intending to, he had shattered the comfortable constraints that kept me from taking greater risks and pursuing my own vision. The technology community took notice of our rapid growth and innovative approaches. In September, I was honored with the Regional Technology Innovation Award, standing on stage to accept recognition for achievements that might never have materialized had I remained in my comfortable position at Datatech. Several former colleagues attended the ceremony, including Thomas Wilson, the former CEO who had always supported my work. My experience shaped not just my business model, but my entire philosophy about leadership and collaboration. I became determined to create an environment where technical excellence was recognized and rewarded, where decisions were made based on merit rather than politics, and where every team member felt valued for their unique contributions. When disagreements arose, we focused on the technical facts rather than personalities or hierarchy, resulting in better solutions and stronger team cohesion. Have you ever experienced a professional setback that eventually led you to something better? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Like this video if you have ever dealt with a boss who did not appreciate your value, and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming workplace challenges. Share this with someone who might need encouragement after facing unfair treatment at work. Remember that sometimes losing what we thought we needed opens the door to what we truly deserve. Thank you for listening. And until next time, keep building your own path to success.